This video is all about world building. It's for you creators out there creating your own worlds for games, books, comics, or any other type of medium that you're using to share that amazing story that's been marinating in your mind for days, months, or even years. So before we get properly started, be sure to click that subscribe button and bell to go with it so you don't miss out on any future videos. And now let's just jump straight in. So let's start off by just explaining what exactly world building is. So I've gone over to the lovely oxfordreference.com, which gives the definition as the creation of an imaginary world and its geography, biology, cultures, etc. And of course this applies especially to science fiction or fantasy stories. And I think that's a good solid definition to go by. Basic world building is everything that makes the world that you're going to create for your story. It makes it live, makes it breathe, and makes it make sense. So as I've mentioned before in my visual library series, it's about asking these questions and letting your world answer them for you, or figuring it out and making those into rules for your world. So for example, how do people get food, or how do they travel? What's the terrain like? Are there large varieties of animals? Are they animals for the cold? Are they animals for the warm? Why is that? All that sort of stuff. So once you've got that, you're building your world. So let's start putting together the beginnings of a story just for fun, and the world to go with it, just to help explain exactly how this world building thing works. You can do it along with me if you want, with your own story, or you can make a brand new world too. So I'm just going to delete this layer and let's make a start. So to start off with, I think it's very important to first of all decide whether it's going to be our world, so that's the Earth, or not. So is it going to be Earth or something else? And when I say something else, I'm talking about, is it going to be a planet? Is it going to be a flat planet? So flat, round, stacked on top of things. Is it going to be in a space station, an asteroid belt? Will it be under the sea, a never-ending sea? Will it be on a wall? I remember reading a book when I was younger where there was no planet. There was no world. There was just a wall. Everything was on a wall. And it was pretty cool. But either way, you need to set boundaries for your world as a whole. So for this story that we're going to go with a flat world. So we'll call this world just world for the moment. A world. And it's flat. Okay, so that there straight away we've got a rule there. It's world. You cannot go through one side of the world and come back around to where you were. If you keep going east, you're gonna fall off, or you're gonna encounter something wherever that may be. So we've got that flat world. So let's go into a bit more detail. Let's think about how this world works. Does it all take place on a continent, or is it a bunch of little islands? What is the layout of that world? You don't need to get all the details for this bit now, but you need to decide whether it's a massive landmass or not, just so that you can start figuring out how exactly the different parts work together. So for this, I'm just going to say it's a supercontinent. Continent, teeny islands, and Great Lakes. Okay, so some places will be hard to get to, and there will be a few little remote islands which might have their own sort of thing going on, like governments running and own cultures going, but we'll talk about that later. So we've got to that section. So now let's think about the time period that this is being set in, and that will help us also lead into the technology level, the general technology level. But let's just start with the time period. So time period, we should use our own time period, so the early 21st century as the base, and then go from there. So we have the 21st, and we can either go backwards or forwards. Backwards, you of course are heading into primitivity, and forwards we're heading into speculations and what could be there in the future, or what could not be there in the future due to post-apocalypticness. So when we're talking about the future, as I said, that could be post-apocalyptic, so a world which is worse off than ours, or it could be a robot singularity, it could be super duper advanced for all we know. We just want to know for now, is it in the future? We'll go into a bit more detail about how things work in the next section. So that's what, is it in the future or is it in the past? If it's in the past, you also need to consider different civilizations. So say for example, if I just go onto Google and search what, say, Addis Ababa looked like in the 1800s. So here's a picture of Addis Ababa from the past. I'm not sure exactly what year it is, but it's definitely older than the last sort of 50, 60, 70 years because it's a black and white image. So it's going to be quite old. That's what that looked like back in the past. Whereas if we were to say pull up London in the past, so I'll just go back to Google. Google Images is your friend, by the way, when you're researching stuff, especially visually. So let's look at London 1800s. Let's get an image. So there we go. Straight away we can see massive difference. Okay, so you need to decide where it's sitting with that. Is it going to be like that or like that? So I'm just going to go with London because of course I'm familiar with it. I grew up here and I've seen its history a lot. So normally if you were going to go for a different country, which I do suggest because London's been overdone, if you were doing a different country, you would do your research on that and really like dig into what was going on there. So I'm going to go with London Victorian era as a base. It won't be exactly the Victorian era, but we're using that as a base in terms of the beginnings of style, the beginnings of technology and stuff like that, and we can extrapolate out from there. So we've got our planet and its general geography in terms of whether it's a planet or not. We've got London Victorian era as our sort of base for the time period. Let's take this a little bit further. So we're going to consider technology levels now, and this ties into not just the era but also and time period. It also ties into loads of other areas, loads of other things like how culture goes and how your power system works if you're going to have a power system. You need to decide at this point what's the most advanced technology of this world at this time. Okay, so let's say for me I might say technology has hurtled forward due to an asteroid crashing with a substance that has advanced humanity forward. So it's sort of sci-fi history. So it's not quite at our level. It doesn't have computers, so this is where I'm going to start setting down a few rules. There are no computers, but they do have a technology which has come down through this asteroid from space that allows them to do things like move at speed on an individual level, not through trains but on an individual level, to build things to really high heights that shouldn't be possible, and allows them to engage in building levels of destruction. So let's just note these down. So we said no computers, advanced building, and individual high speed travel. And with that we have destruction on a building sized level. Okay, if you're wondering what that means, that building size level, check out our podcast on power levels and the question of power. We did it, me and my two brothers, and we spoke about how exactly people in a lot of communities rate power levels or consider power levels within fantasy and science fiction as a genre. So yeah, we're saying destruction on a building size level, so it's not too much, no nukes yet. So this is our technology level, and yes, with that asteroid coming down and giving them a bit of extra power, it's ripped straight from Black Panther. That was purposeful. We can literally take elements from stories, whatever stories we like, as long as we reinterpret it in a really interesting way. Now at the moment it sounds like a carbon copy, but there's loads of things that we can do to reinterpret it and make it a whole lot more interesting and individual to this story. After all, nothing's new under the sun, it's just different interpretations. So let's keep moving. Whoops. Scroll back up. In fact, let me just shrink this down because it's getting a bit big. So shrink down, and I'll shrink my brush with it. Okay, so we've got our technology sorted in the broad sense, and that's enough for now. Okay, we're going to build in layers. So once we've done all the base, so technology, geography, time period, and so on, then we just keep building on top of those areas until we end up with a whole big world built. All right, that's how we're going to do this. You can't do everything linearly or one by one. It has to be all together. All right, so we're going to move on to the last part of this video, this part of it, because this will be a series, and we're just going to make a decision about the sort of people living here. It's important that we make this fairly early. We don't need to create every single race or every single group that we'll encounter, but by having a sort of base set of rules, then it just makes it easier to build certain stuff like geography and culture and religion and stuff like that. So let's talk about what sort of people are there. And it's one question which will help us really develop this entire segment of our world building. And that is, are the people homogeneous? Are they all the same? And this is on multiple levels, okay? So for starters, are the inhabitants human or something else? And then whatever species they are, so I'll just pick human for mine, just to make it easy. And whatever they are they the only sentient creatures on this world? Are there 10 different types of sentient creatures and they're just one, and your main characters are just one species, or multiple species across that, and then there's more? So you need to figure that out too. So I'm just going to go with there's 3 species, just to keep it nice and interesting. All right. So we got these humans. We got the three species alongside them. Okay, I can sort out what they are later. It's not important, but humans are not the only ones. But we're just going to focus on humans because our main character is going to be a human. I've decided. Now, our question is, for these humans, do they all look the same? Because for years we've had fantasy games where pretty much all the characters are the same color. And yes, Final Fantasy, I am looking at you. I'm a big fan, but that's one of the major mistakes that they make. You go into a world which is completely different to our own in the sense that everybody is exactly the same skin color and everybody has exactly the same type of hair. Of course, that's weird. That just doesn't happen unless you've systematically wiped out everybody else. So you need to decide, as this world's creator, will you vary the skin tones? Will you vary the hair textures, the facial features? And with that, their cultures. Will you have the same dress sense, the same technologies, or the same usage of a particular technology and the same customs within the world that you have? So you need to think about this. So for me, of course, I'm going to say variety, more than we've even got in this world, more than on this world. So this will enable us to have things like characters with green hair, or characters who can grow abnormally tall, so say to 12 foot tall. Although I'm not sure, would they count as a human? Yes, they can count as human. So yeah, that we allow that in this world. I'm going to allow that. So that rule is made. Just before going on, I just want to say why this allows for really interesting things to happen if you do this, and why you're killing off loads of opportunities if you do make everybody homogeneous, make everybody the same. So say for example, if your main characters are from a region where everybody's dark, say they're all dark. Let me just draw this in fact. So let's pull up a brown. So there are our main characters. We'll say there's 3 of them, but one main character has lighter skin. Alright, look at my brilliant drawing. Wouldn't believe I'm an art teacher, would you? Alright, so here are our main characters. Now in the region that they're from, everybody has similarly dark skin like them, but Their last friend, who maybe just joined them recently, or maybe he did grow up with them, he's pale. He's paler skinned. He's from a different area to them. All right. Now, say for example they were dark haired and they had blue hair. That was standard among the people of this area. He was lighter skinned with dark hair. So now this causes interesting moments and interesting conversations within the story. It opens up opportunities for really interesting stuff to take place. So say for example they're trying to infiltrate somewhere. Can they really dress in disguises? Can they disguise themselves as guards or whatever if one of them is obviously not from that region? Well, no, they're gonna have to figure out another way around that for that person, that last character, to get in. Or say for example, if they're traveling through a really hot area, will this character's skin burn easier simply because he's lighter? Or appear to burn easier, because of course everybody burns over time. How will they deal with that? What sort of conversations will they have about that? Say if, for example, he's suffering like that or she's suffering like that, but the others don't realise because they're simply not that great friends. But one person does. All of a sudden, that opens the opportunity for conversations to take place, which may not have happened initially because there was nothing else to cause it. So all of a sudden, we start to get these really interesting conversations happening that relate to the rest of the world. These are, or to the real world, because these are conversations that we do have in real world. So do you see what I mean? How when we limit ourselves and make everything homogeneous, we endanger the whole story and where the story can go. And this is why I'm so appalled when I see big AAA studios, either for animation or for film or for games, doing the same old, or making everybody look the same within the game. How strange that is when they're working on an entire world or entire continent scale. Because as we know, there's very few places like that in the world, and have been very few places like that in the world, where even on a continental scale, where everybody looks the same. So yeah, just a point that I thought I'd add on to the end of this before we move on, because we do need to make sure that we get these characters right. The people are what finish off the world and make it living and breathing. And we will talk more about how that can work, especially with these different species which we put in alongside everybody else. So watch out for that in a future video. For now though, that's all. Hopefully you've been able to begin making some serious steps towards building your very own world, or refine it if you're already partway there before you start watching this video. So once again, remember to click that like and subscribe button so that you can get more creative advice, hints and tips, as well as educational news and information and art analysis. We've got so much going on this channel. But thanks again for listening. I will hold on to this so that we can use it in our next video. And that's all for now. Until next time.